European reference networks for rare diseases. So these are new and these are really exciting. It is funded by the European Commission, a group within that called DG Santé. And what DG Santé did was identify that across Europe there are different standards of care. So there are areas where there may not be expertise in rare diseases. Those of us who live here in the UK, you have a population of 60 million or more, we have the opportunity to understand rare diseases. You'll see from my accent, I'm a Dublin girl, I'm from Ireland. Population when I was growing up of only 3 million, so much smaller populations. So how across Europe, across the borders, could there be sharing of that knowledge? And today you have Professor Canavini come here from Italy, so there's how people share all that knowledge together. So what was set up from an epilepsy point of view was a pilot network looking at epilepsy surgery in particular. And these slides are stolen from my colleague, Professor Helen Cross at Great Ormond Street. So Helen's been really instrumental at pushing forward all these networks really closely. So she was involved with colleagues across Europe in a reference network for epilepsy surgery. And we held multidisciplinary team meetings and shared experience and used that to inform next steps. The European Commission then was at the same time heading in the direction of saying, yes, this is a really good way of sharing practice, and what should we do? So they put a call out for rare diseases, and they have selected 24 different rare diseases, metabolic medicine, rare cancers, rare autoimmune diseases, and they have set those up, provided funding for them. And what I'm talking to you about today is the Rare Disease Network for Epilepsy, and it's called EpiCARE. That's one of those slides, you look at it and you think, woohoo, but it's supposed to make you go woohoo because it gives you an idea of all the different types of rare epilepsy. And what you can see up there is genetic diagnosis after genetic diagnosis. And that's that explosion we've had in genetics in the last 5 or 10 years. And this slide was made by Ronit Pressler for the applications for a reference network. And Ronit Pressler is a consultant in paediatric clinical neurophysiology with me at Great Ormond Street Hospital. And the vision is to deliver highly specialised diagnoses and care across Europe for rare and complex epilepsies. Complex epilepsies is what we work with. Ring chromosome definitely fits in the top section there, rare epilepsies, really rare. And EpiCARE is now 28 centres across Europe collaborating together. Here in the UK, we also have Oxford, we have the Adult National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery, and Scotland as well in Glasgow. So all these groups are working together to look at how we can help each other to help care for young people. Want to increase the diagnosis, want to make expert discussion more easy. We want to standardise protocols in a good way. We want to harmonise our skills and improve the knowledge, and this is where Allison comes in and you guys come in, empowering people with rare epilepsies, their families and their caregivers. So, Great Ormond Street Hospital is the lead centre for this, so you have a UK centre leading this, and it is being delivered by these work packages. So those lines that go down the middle are all the work packages. The ones on your right-hand side are all about making diagnoses. The ones on your left-hand side are all about treatment and therapy. And then across these are working groups looking at education training, research, clinical trials, databases, guidelines. And there are lead centres established for all these areas with lead colleagues working in them. There's a very clear structure with management boards and steering committees, and I'm very pleased to sit on the management board and because I'm the lead at Great Ormond Street for our epilepsy service. And the idea is that the healthcare providers can enable all of this work. Embedded in that are the European Paediatric Advisory Groups, which Allison's going to speak to you about because she is well embedded in those and involved in those and knows all about these in detail. The networks have been approved. They've been launched across Europe. And we've all had our kick-off meeting. So the kick-off meeting for the rare epilepsies was in London in June of this year. And we'll see where we go from there. But it's brand new and it's exciting. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Allison.
So I'm going to tell you what my role is within the new EpiCARE network as a European patient advocate for patients and families across Europe with rare and complex epilepsies, which includes all of you guys in the room. What is my role? What is the role of me and the team that I am working with in terms of European patient advocates? It sounds very grand, doesn't it? So we're there to bring the patient's perspective, the family perspective and the knowledge of what it's actually like living with these rare epilepsies. What's it like living with Ring 20, for example, on a day-to-day basis? We are not expected to be medical or scientific experts. We are the non-medical partners in the reference network group. We are working with the doctors and the researchers to bring your perspective to the table in an equal partnership so that you're listened to and heard and your needs will be met alongside the needs of what the doctors and the researchers and the academics feel they need to be doing in terms of progressing and moving forward for the rare and complex epilepsies, which includes Ring 20. We will ensure that your patient voice is heard throughout the development process. So there is currently a 5-year plan for these European reference networks. We hope they will go on and beyond that into the future and be so successful. But the needs of the patients and families will be heard and will be met by these teams and listened to in terms of the success. And our role as the patient advocates is we are fully supported by Eurodis, who make sure that all of the patient advocate groups across all the European reference networks have the tools and the information to do our jobs the most effectively for you guys as families. There's a great long list there, but I'll just pick out a couple of key points. A bit more about our role. We're all about the patient-centric approach. It's all about patient-centred care and information. It's about your needs as a patient. What do you want for your epilepsy care? What do you need? We're there to bring that to the table and ensure that the clinicians are aware of what your needs are. We're there to ensure that the ethical issues are addressed. We want to make sure there's transparency and quality of care and safety standards. And the clinical outcomes and the treatment options. We're there to ensure and monitor how well these ERNs are doing. So that rare and complex epilepsy, we want to give back from your perspective as families how well these reference networks are performing. Are we increasing the positive diagnoses for rare epilepsies as a virtue of this network? Are we improving treatment for people with these rare epilepsies? And that feedback, we are there to gather that information and feed that back in, because if it's not doing that, it's not doing the job that it's supposed to be doing. We're going to be making sure that information is accessible and disseminated out to you guys. So if the doctors and the researchers are piling out information that's far too scientific and we all go, whoo, don't understand that, then it's no good for you guys. You have to know what you're dealing with. If you're asked to sign a consent form, you're asked to sign read some information. It's got to be in language that you understand. And we're there to put your voice. We're not there to say, we understand it. We're there to say, if we don't understand it, our families won't understand it. So you need to bring it down to the level that we need to know. And we're there also to contribute to research. So I'm one of a team of currently about a dozen of us around Europe. You can see there are a number of countries represented. And we all volunteer or work for different rare epilepsy organisations around Europe, so we're bringing different perspectives. I'm bringing the perspective of Ring 20, but also I think what I feel I'm bringing to the table with working with these lovely people is the other ultra-rare epilepsies, because some of the groups are representing epilepsy groups such as Dravet syndrome, which is much better understood, and they have much greater support networks than we do. That's not to say that they still have a long way to go, but the real ultra-rare epilepsies really don't have that, and Ring 20 falls into that. And there's other rare epilepsies that have less than we do. They don't have patient support groups, they don't have patient registries, they don't even know how to contact each other. So how do we operate? We're all based around Europe. How do we communicate with each other? So we have a meeting via Skype call about every 3 months at the moment. We've got our next call in September, scheduled in the diary. And we're due to meet in person once a year. That will be organised at some kind of conference or event to physically meet in person with the other patient advocate representatives, but also with the doctors and the researchers that we're working with, so that we're going to work very closely in terms of collaboration. We have a cloud-based SharePoint system for sharing of information, so it's very easily accessible. We communicate via email, and we're each given assigned tasks. And one of those I'll come on to in a moment. So you've seen this slide from Sophie earlier about the different work packages. And so each of us within the patient advocacy group have been tasked with being allocated against primarily one of these groups, ideally. There's maybe not quite enough of us to go around, because as you know, there's 9 between the diagnostic and the therapeutic, and there's another 5 work groups across the middle to represent. And I've put forward to be involved with the laboratory diagnostics, because we've been asked to say where can we bring our skills to the table. And I think the diagnostic odyssey of Ring 20 is something very unique to bring to the table, and ring chromosomes. So I was quite interested in speaking to the guys about that. And the other area that I felt quite passionate about, that I felt I could work with, was the targeted medical therapies, because from my perspective, we don't have any, and we're not the only rare epilepsy. So how do we change that? How does that move forward? But actually, one of the very first work packages that's already kicked off is the e-database work package. Now, this is all about building a database across Europe for all of the rare and complex epilepsies. It's being led by Professor Lage in Belgium, and his team are building industry standard REDCap database, which is due to be delivered by March next year. And that database will be capturing just about 10 or a dozen fields of basic information about patients with these rare epilepsies. You know, name, address, age, sex, what syndrome they've got, have they got Ring 20, Dravet, Lennox-Gastaut, whatever, what types of seizures they have, what sort of meds they're on. That database is going to be populated by those 28 centres across the 13 countries, and they're being tasked with populating 100 cases initially per centre. So that's, if I get my maths right, quite a few cases. That database obviously is only a start. And there are a number of other patient registries out there, patient databases by patient support groups, that are already populated with that information and a lot more. So for the likes of the Dravet syndrome group, for example, they also already have patient registry. The EpiCARE group are seeking European funding from the European Commission to see whether they can connect and integrate those existing patient databases into this new EpiCARE database, such that we can really join up the dots and connect all of these patients across Europe. And what's this information going to be used for? It's going to be used in the future to identify patients and patient groups for potential future research into treatments or whatever regarding epilepsy, and future clinical trials, say on new treatments, new drugs, new medications, etc., or non-medical treatment options. Now, why is this important to us as Ring 20? Well, we don't have a database or a patient registry for Ring 20. We don't know how many cases of Ring 20 there are across Europe or around the world. A number of you and many other people ask, how many cases of Ring 20 are there? Nobody can provide that information. A data registry, a patient database would start to build that picture. And that's all about epidemiology. And without a database, we cannot be invited into research or clinical trials. So you heard earlier from Archana that the cannabidiol trial that was done at Great Ormond Street, that was done around a group of Dravet patients and Lennox-Gastaut patients, if I'm right. They were invited for probably lots of different reasons, but one reason they were able to be invited because there was a patient database to enable those families, those patients to be contacted, to be invited onto the trial, or for their clinicians to invite them onto the trial or recommend them. Ring 20 patients would never have been invited for that because we don't, the health professionals don't have the information about us to contact us. So what's changing? This is really exciting. That new database that's coming on board next year in March will be made available to us as Ring 20. A copy of that database for free will be made available to us as Ring 20 Research and Support and to you guys online. Q2 next year, summer next year, we're going to have access to a patient database that we can start to populate and build that information for ourselves and for the European Reference Network. And with your consent, if the European funding goes ahead and we have the option to integrate into that, if we get the opportunity to build a wider, broader database with more information about Ring 20, that can be integrated into that whole EpiCARE database. And what does that give us? That gives us progress. That gives us the opportunity to move forward and be involved in the new research, what's going ahead in the world of epilepsy. It gives you an opportunity to be invited. Doesn't mean you have to participate, but you have a choice that you don't have today. And the future, well, the whole concept of EpiCARE, and obviously Sophie touched on this, is more joined up healthcare for you guys and all the others with rare and complex epilepsies. That's going to be through a virtual multidisciplinary team. I hear from many of you families, you say to us, my healthcare team have said, we haven't got another patient with Ring 20. I don't know how to treat you. Do you, as Ring 20 Research and Support, have any information to provide to my healthcare team? I've had from some of your families, or some of the families not attending, they couldn't come today. They would have loved to come today. But is there any information that can go back to my healthcare team? Because they want to hear what our esteemed speakers are speaking about today, hence why we're filming here today. That information is there to be shared. It's about, because, going back to the multidisciplinary team, with the European reference networks, your healthcare professionals in the future will have the opportunity to say, I've got a Ring 20 patient, can I go onto the EpiCARE network and contact a Ring 20 specialist and share these EEG findings, these MRI findings, and get some expert advice from a healthcare professional so that I know how to treat my patient. So no longer are you in the dark as patients and families, but no longer are your healthcare teams. That's really important. I think that's incredibly powerful. There'll be improved information for yourselves as patients and families, because there'll be information put up on it's going to be a cloud-based, not only is the database going to be there, but there's going to be cloud-based portal for you to be able to access information about syndromes. So if somebody gets a new diagnosis or there's some latest information about syndromes, then that will be accessible. It's all about increasing awareness, education and training of these different epilepsies. Ring 20 will be up there. So there'll be more opportunity for people to say, I've never heard of this, but I know where to go to get the information. And as I've mentioned, there'll be access to research and clinical trials. So I'm really excited about this. I hope you are too. I hope that's, you know, we've only been working on this very short while, but, you know, it's a 5-year plan, and hopefully it will bring some positives forward for you guys. Thank you.